2, 1.
Hey, welcome to the Coaching for Life webinar here. We're at stage 2 of the Cultivate the Heart series, and this one is on safety. We welcome you. It's Lou and Wade here, and Lou, any introductory thoughts as we get started?
Oh, Wade, I'm looking forward to today's session. It's one of those pivotal issues of life, but the least discussed, especially in the world of machismo, because it sounds like you're a sissy or wearing pink if you're going to discuss issues of risk. And yet risk management is the most critical factor in success or failure defining a life.
Well, that is so true, and we welcome you. We hope this will be a very encouraging time for you as a coach, a leader, a teacher, a parent, and to help us to cultivate those around us. And why cultivate the heart? We've talked about the foundational reason to do this is to build healthy relationships and performance. I think that's what we all want. It's the ultimate goal of a team. It's the ultimate goal of a classroom, a family, is that there's great relationships, healthy relationships, and there's outstanding performance. I think it's the goal and desire of every coach's heart. But we want to walk through some stages here that would help us define what that really looks at. We talked about 6 questions for those in authority. Last week we talked about is there honor. And this one, the 6, is there safety? And we want to go through the safety issue, physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, and other areas that in your program, on your team, the question is it safe? So let's dive right into this. Safety. Well, when we get to the definition of this, Lou, we talked last week about this as real safety is the responsible way to handle risk. What do you mean by that?
You know, Wade, we are all dealing with the issues of risk, whether to play a person with a moderate injury and then losing for the rest of the season. We're managing risk in how we trust another coach or our recruiting department, and how we put a player that's not proven on the ball field at a critical moment, how the players work off the court on their own time. We're all dealing with these issues, and so the trust factor of players to coaches, of coaches to players, depends on how well they understand and own and take the most responsible approach to manage the risk factors that are physical, that are relational, and of course in our conscience as well. And
so basically what we're talking about, Lou, here is everything you do in life really has a risk to it. Some might be a lower risk than others, but when you get in your car, there is a risk that you might get into an accident. The statistics are low, but when you get in your car, how do you be responsible to deal with that risk? Well, obviously, it's putting on the seatbelt. Obviously, it's using your turn signals. Obviously, as you're going out, you're becoming more a responsible driver. That is really defining safety that you get from point A to point B. So when we're looking at the sports world, we're looking at a classroom, we're looking at a business. Every day you have risks, you have practices, kids could get hurt. You're running plays, you can run a risky play where this involves a little bit more, where your team better be a little bit more responsible to execute that play. You could make a big call in a game on a 3rd and long, or take a shot at the end of the game, or hit and run in baseball. And as you take that risk, I mean, you better have a responsible way to handle that risk, because it might work and it might not, correct?
Oh, wait, I'm going to go so far as to say to play it safe is taking the greatest risk of all. And there are those who will not take any relationship responsibility, who will not open their heart and share ideas, who will not adventure physically on the field, who will not dare come up with a creative way or come out with a new marketing plan or to present a new product for fear of being embarrassed or losing money or whatever. And the greatest risk factor involved is that they will not reach their potential and live with regret in the long run. So when we look at the scale of risk, we're looking at those who are fools, who take no thought for the risk involved, and naively and unwisely assume they can handle anything. And of course, that's like the old phrase of the redneck who says his last words are "watch this" kind of thing.
Yeah.
And of course, the other person is the other extreme is the fearful person who does nothing, who's introverted, who's withdrawn, who's incapable of addressing more things because they're really bound by fear. But the real balance of this is the person who's adventuresome. And we see this management, this whole scale in all of creation in terms of having positive ions, negative ions, and of course we're trying to produce healthy tension. And that's what we call responsible risk management.
Well, I think that's extremely big for us because as coaches, we're taking a risk every day trying to develop. Maybe that's why, Lou, some companies or some teams don't really get over the hump to excellence and they remain average because they aren't willing to maybe risk more.
Yeah.
Or how about this one? If you really want to put it back, does the coach want to be more responsible to take on more and make that risk?
And I think that the ingredients then of how you do that define whether you're listening and taking in all the factors, whether you articulate and verbalize them, whether you share them with the responsible people, or how you manage those things once you know them.
Well, that's great. So here's the issue at hand. Is when it comes to risk, you need to address and assess the situation, the need, etc., and really own the responsibility. But what do you mean by address and assess the situation?
Well, that's kind of a fun deal. You know, I have an old car that I run around a lot, and I think it's a great little car, but I don't take it on long trips for fear that it would leave my wife stranded or myself stranded. Yesterday I got dumped off a horse, Wade, because I took this young horse out and I gave it a little bit of liberty on its second ride. I took a risk with it. The horse did just fine except for the fact that it got tired, it wanted to lay down and started to stumble, and as it stumbled, I fell off and the horse ran off.
So would that be, that would be a situation where the coach, we're pushing our players and they are getting physically tired and we're wanting them to execute something when they're tired, and when athletes and players are tired, they make mistakes. And if we don't read that situation, we're going to end up having 3-4 turnovers in a row, a couple bad plays in a row because we're just physically exhausted and we're not addressing and assessing the situation right in front of us and taking responsibility to own that so we continue to play safe.
Well, you might not want to play your second string player, but you run the risk of fatiguing your first string player and of injuring him or him not doing his best either. So those are things we're managing all the time. So the key is you can't manage something that you don't see or don't own. So the key is being fully aware of the things that are involved and taking in as much information as you possibly can take in, assessing it and assigning it some kind of value in our mind as to what's really going on. The more coaches who are working together to manage a team, the more they address these things, the less tension we'll have between us, the more successful they'll be in the best outcome.
Well, that's a very good point. So a couple thoughts on here about safety first. First one, there's significant results cannot be achieved without addressing the greatest point of limitation. The need to strengthen the weak points on our teams, our players, because you have a player whose skill might not be at one place, or they might be weak, dribbling with their left hand, or making a certain block, or different things in sports. But significant results are not going to happen if we don't address those, correct?
Well, that's exactly right. If you don't play a strong offense, you better play an awful good defense. When it comes to managing money, if you want more interest or more return, you realize you may lose it all to a bad investment. And you have to assess that very same thing. And if you don't know the weakest point of your team, the weakest element of your player, the poorest plays that you run, or the weakest part of your coaching or preparation, then you really can't start to spin the game to your strengths because you're naive about your weak points. And believe it or not, somebody they will study you and find your weak points. That's true in parenting. It's true in leadership of any kind. And that's where you start saying, I am not good at this kind of thing. I need a helper in this area. I am good in this thing. I need to focus in that area.
So it's absolutely key to be in a consistent mindset as a coach for improvement in all areas and be aware of my strong points and my weak points, because every week we're being scouted and being looked at for them to find our weak points, and that's where you go into games and they expose us.
Yeah, we think if we're successful, that we'll minimize these things. The truth is just the opposite. The more successful we are, the more people study our weak points. There's always a Trojan horse. There's always an opportunity because they're studying our enemy. And, you know, it's one of the companies says, we're number 2, we try harder, because they're always benefiting from watching number 1 go out there and make the mistakes and then improving on them. We watch that in IT work and so forth all the way across the board. The more successful, the more speed, the more cumbersome, the more momentum you have, the more somebody can overthrow you. The more speed you put on a car, the more likely you are to make a fatal mistake. And we realize that that's true because you tend to rely only on your strengths and only on your momentum.
And the second part here, Lou, unaddressed or illegitimate fears result in energy loss. Power struggles and losses are minimized by addressing legitimate concerns. What do you mean by that?
Well, that's a fun one because we think if we don't say it or don't recognize it, we're almost like conferring negative information here. If we address the fact that I'm afraid of something or other, or I have a concern about this, it's like we're giving license to it. I don't think that's a non-faith response. I think that's saying, okay, if I do this, I have these additional risks to take advantage of. Now I can assure myself by practicing that player ahead of time in that area, by putting them with a good teammate, or by not pulling them from the game at this particular time. And that's true with me with livestock or people. If I address somebody who's going to be very explosive, I may want to do it in the light of another person. If there's 3 of us, or I may want to do it where they're least threatened and most likely to hear success. I may want to go to them privately. But obviously the key is to assess those issues and to put them in the best potential for win-win. Naivety and simplicity are not issues of good faith or good exercise, good practice, good leadership. We should be simple. We should be trusting. We should be passionate, but not naively so. We should address all these things and then take responsibility for them.
Because just the first part about that, you could be in a football game and make it's 3rd and 15 and trying to make a long pass play, and there's a huge fear in a quarterback if we don't get the first down late in the game. That the quarterback can go out and mentally be losing energy due to fear or something like that, instead of addressing the player and saying, hey, it's okay, we're going to go for this together. And all of a sudden it might release them and, you know, be a little more relaxed in the situation, so more energy can be channeled to make play instead of what will happen if we don't. I think a lot of times where teams are playing not to lose at the end of the game.
Absolutely. The truth of it is, if we have a conflict in a relationship and we're afraid of losing somebody, afraid of bringing up a certain issue, we've already lost them. But we pretend that if we don't talk about it and just tiptoe around each other, that it'll go away or it won't cause a division. The truth of it is we should address it and then figure out what can I do to try to restore or win back the situation or make this person more comfortable and go and try to build a bridge to it rather than just pretend that it doesn't exist.
Well, that's true.
That's very true, even in players, Wade, who have an injury, okay? And I think coaches are like, there's a danger of them being called a sissy and given a boo-boo patch type thing, or them naively covering it and not telling the coach that they have a stress muscle or heat in a joint or whatever, and them not being able to put a brace on it or assess it or minimize, because they may have a bigger game down the road that's more important for that player to be ready for than to injure them by not telling their coach or their health advisor that.
Yeah. So as a coach, you know, what areas are we concerned with? We always talk about these 3 so we can be a 3D, a 3-dimensional coach. But obviously we're looking at, you know, areas of concern when it comes to safety is one, behavior or the physical part of the game. The performance part, obviously in this arena, you're looking at it, you have the right equipment. Is your field safe? Do you have holes in your field? Just the safety issue of the sport itself. Is the equipment on tight? Does it fit correctly? You can see a lot of injuries happen due to equipment that's bad or old, or things can come up. You're also looking at the second one here is we're after the attitude, though, which is more the relationships and also the emotional part. You know, of players. Is that safe? I mean, how's the attitude of my team? Am I if I have a negative attitude and things aren't going well as a coach, does that start to roll over to all my team and players? And now practice isn't a safe place to be anymore because there's a lot of bullying going on by what coaches are saying or doing or unleashing on players because of their own frustration. And the last stage we always talk about is a heart issue here, is really the character and spirit of a kid. Are we developing? It's a heart issue. You're always dealing with the heart of your team. So is your team's heart safe? Has it been destroyed? Has it been built up? As your season's gone along with big wins, has it become arrogant? Or is it a big loss and it's been devastated in and I know teams that seasons are done in the middle of the season after a big loss, and they never rebound because they lost the heart of the team. Or you can lose the heart of a player by lack of communication, or an issue goes on in practice, or whatever, and I could lose the heart of my players. So as a coach, when it comes to safety as a leader, look at it always through this framework of these three things: the behavior, attitude, and heart. The game, the community, and the next generation. What are we pouring into? The character, the lifeline of the next generation. Lou, any thoughts on these three areas that are so important for a coach to be concerned with?
You know, Wade, this issue came up this morning earlier when I was talking to a father who was addressing the needs of his an older daughter, and a young man is seeking to court her, and he wanted, how can I know if this is the right guy? Because she was asking his counsel of it. And I said, ask this man what kind of risk he has taken on in the last year of his life, 6 months to a year. Is he doing anything to professionally challenge his life, skill-wise or business-wise? Is he really stretching his borders? And I asked him, relationally, is he dealing with any areas of bitterness or difficulty or growing in his relationship toward his father, whom he had difficulties with? And then also, constantly, is he really being pushed where he's gaining new truth and he's being exercised by thoughts and values that are really pushing this guy's limit? I said, if he doesn't have anything that's stretching him positively, he will not fit in this family, because the whole family has characterized as go-getters. Yeah. And I don't think she'd be happy with a person that she doesn't really respect as a personally challenged exercise person, taking on risks to be better.
So we could do this with our players. We can do this with our coaching staff. Is my program safe? And be looking at my coaches, the way they coach just physically, and what's the relationship like and attitude like with the players and amongst themselves as staff.
It's only safe if they take on the risk. It's not safe if they ignore them.
Yeah. So here are three areas that we need to be concerned with as a coach. Now, here are some foundational things that, as a coach, that if I'm going to have a safe program and keep a place safe, whether I'm parenting or leading a classroom, here are three things we just want to talk about. Number one, be prepared. Number two, be attentive to what is going on around you. Number three, which is probably the most important, is be an investor in it. And, as a coach, obviously, are you prepared? Is your practice organized, ready to go? Is equipment organized? Is everything ready to go as a team as I go to a game, go to my practice field, go to my schedule? And we all go to this. We show up at gym time. Here's when practice starts. Here's when it ends. Here's my schedule for the month. And here's when all the practices, the games, the season. We've got to be prepared for that, because if we're not ready, not only physically, but are we ready emotionally, to be ready? Are we ready socially to give to my players and build relationships? And am I ready with my own integrity? Am I prepared to take on the risks that are coming? Or maybe not risks, but the problems and issues and chaos that is coming. And am I willing to respond and be responsible to own the risk that is coming? And we'll talk a little bit about the attentive part, because as I'm out coaching, as I'm out going through the daily routine of practices, drills, what do we need to do as a coach so we can be foundational and keep things safe and by being attentive?
Well, Wade, I don't think we can be relative in our culture without an attentiveness to what's taking place around us. I don't think we can be effective as a team unless we're listening to our team members, to our opponents, to the awareness of what are taking place in our culture to better physically prepare an athlete, mentally prepare an athlete, or even doing what we're doing, how I can capture more of the heart of the athlete. You see, what we're presenting is because of what's taking place in our culture and the need to capitalize on the whole player. So you cannot be effective without taking on the risk and the responsibilities of engaging our players with the kind of truth, the relationships, and the issues that they need to have in order to become more effective. And then we start investing. How do we invest as coaches? This is exactly what we're about, Wade. Our purpose for existing is to challenge coaches to take on more risk. Well, what do you mean by that? By reaching parents, reaching families, by speaking truth, by being intentional about character. Why? Because we're hearing that there's a great need for this. There's a great famine for these kinds of things on the playing field, and there's a great famine in our culture and absence of coaches really doing this. And so we're investing. We're preparing. We're listening to the coaches as we work with them, just as we play on our team. They're doing the same thing. They're hearing the needs of their athletes, and they're going to be prepared to be intentionally investors. And now they're becoming entrepreneurial. They're becoming leaders on the field because they're taking on responsible risk.
Well, I think it's so key to invest in our players by praise, approval, by teaching, critiquing, correcting, and taking extra time, effort, and energy as a coach, because our ultimate goal, I think, is for us to put out confident athletes. People who are confident when they go out and play, because why? We have invested in them, prepared them, been attentive to what is going on in the skill set, in the mindset, in the team set, as I'm pouring into my team and my players, and I'm seeing all these different dimensions of my players, the behavior, the attitude, and heart. And I'm investing in not just in one. A lot of coaches will invest in the physical technique because that's the easiest. I see it, it's tangible, I can do that. But to start to invest in his mindset, his mental skills, his how he thinks, how does he overcome mistakes? What's a tip I can give somebody to live in the moment and go to the next play? Or do they, an incomplete pass, an interception, a turnover, a strikeout, a missed serve, all of a sudden the next 3-4 plays we're off because we can't bounce back. And as a coach, I have to invest because sport, every play up and down the floor, the field, every play is a risk. And are we willing to take those risks so we can perform at higher levels? So here's what it comes down to as a coach. The more you want means the more you must give. I think, as coaches, with everything on our plate, the time and energy, I know it depends on what, if you're 3/4 of your season, you're exhausted, physically, mentally. You might be fortunate enough where things are rolling right along, you're talented enough, you have such a team unity that things are clicking, but most teams, that's not happening. And why am I coaching, and what are we really doing out there day in and day out to impact the next generation? And Lou, if we want more, we've got to give more.
Wade, I think of that in preparation. When I work a horse, I make sure that I put the best frame of reference there, but I listen to the horse as we go, because new risk comes to the surface, and then I invest more as we go. Two things illustrate this to me, Wade, is years ago, the CEO of the Coke company came out with a new formula, and they marketed the thing, and it was a total flop, and they fired the guy. Well, his product was a risk, and his campaign was a risk, and he lost his job. Later on, they rehired him back because even though his product campaign failed, he led them in facing risk and taking on things, and he led the company to a whole new dimension of financial remuneration. In contrast to that, we have Chick-fil-A, who has been pressured in our culture to open on Sundays because everybody else is, and they chose not to. They are the fastest growing fast food chain in America. More productive by all means because they've chosen to assess the risk of what they would lose in terms of their values and also what the culture needs, and they're saying we're willing to make a statement that we value this kind of day for worship and for family time, etc.
So as a coach, as I'm looking to keep my program safe, boy, it is amazing how much we have to give to make that happen. And the conclusion is to always be coaching with the end in mind. We can get lost in the middle of a season, a game, of practice. But as I approach my field, approach my practice, what is the end result? As you are a master sculptor working with these kids that's been entrusted to you, that you're developing team, you're developing young men and women, not just for a game, but for life itself. So that's why we always believe that the ultimate bottom line is the character that is being invested in your team, that they are learning, developing, and demonstrating on and off the field is really your paycheck, is really your bottom line, is really the passion and purpose of what coaching is all about, is that we are literally developing the next generation to change the world. And Lou, when you get in a round pen, when you take a horse that has never been ridden, and when you walk into that arena right away, that round pen, and take on this project, this player, this incredible athlete, this incredible horse with immense power and strength and ability and talent, when you walk in, you at first have the end in mind as you walk in, don't you?
Absolutely. The professional is the person who assesses the greatest amount of risk and has a plan to address it as it comes up. Passion without caution is your responsibility.
Yeah. Well, here's the question then. Is you're out there coaching day in and day out, is it safe? Do players want to come back to practice? What are they treated like? How are they treated physically? How are they treated socially? Is there hazing going on your team? How do your senior players treat the younger players? How does your staff treat players? How do they treat each other? Is your program safe? If I am going to give you my kid and you are going to coach him for a season, what is that experience going to be like? At the end of the season, are you going to come back and say, I can't wait to play again next year? It was a blast. I learned so much. It was fun. It would push me to limits I didn't know I had. Or is the thing that when the season's over, man, I don't ever want to see that coach again? And I know a lot of stories of that. Those kids who, once that last whistle blows, the buzzer sounds, that's it. I mean, they've been wounded so deeply. You imagine being a coach where a kid quits the sport because of the way you've treated them because it wasn't safe.
Or maybe he can't play later on physically because he's been damaged young too, Wade.
Yeah, and that's happened, we start playing kids that are hurt, and next thing you know, they're, 20, 30 years old trying to chase their kids in the backyard with a limp because of something that happened back in high school. Because they pushed on a knee or a ligament or a bone that was fractured and didn't let it heal enough. So as a coach, we think, and as a leader, it is extremely important that things are safe. And as we continue the Cultivating the Heart series, we talked about honor, safety. In 2 weeks, we're going to talk about discernment, then relationships, excellence, and joy. These are the 6 questions for those in authority that you can ask yourself before season, during the season, and after season to filter your program through to see if you're a program of excellence, if it is healthy and building good relationships. So we hope you enjoyed the Coaching for Life webinar on safety. Lou, thank you so much for your time and your insight. And coaches, we really appreciate having you on board. And remember, we're coaching for life.
Not just a season.
Have a